Question number 38 on the reading portion of College Board's Test 3. In lines 61 to 65, the author of passage 2, which is Wollstonecraft, right, refers to a statement made in passage 1. Passage 1 is Talleyrand, in order to. So let's read lines 61 to 65. What are they talking about here? Consider, sir, dispassionately the observations, for a glimpse of this truth seemed to open before you when you observed. So Wollstonecraft, right, who's all about women being more educated and more the equal of men, and to point out the inconsistencies of Talleyrand's argument, is bringing up a quote that Talleyrand said. He says, so she says, consider what you said, that to see one half of the human race excluded by the other from all participation in government was a political phenomenon that, according to abstract principle, it was impossible to explain. That's what he says in the beginning. It's impossible to explain why all these inequalities occur. So the author passage 2 refers to that statement made in passage 1 in order to do what? In order to, I think, call out passage 1, call out Talleyrand and say, hey, you said this, then what is your argument rest on then if you say that it's impossible to argue why women have or don't have rights? So I think she's kind of calling him out. She's showing on how what you're saying is logically inconsistent, it doesn't make any sense, and it makes you look bad. In lines 61 to 65, the author passage refers to a statement, that statement from Talleyrand, in order to do what? A, call into question the qualifications of the author. Is she calling into question the qualifications? Like, do you really have a PhD? Did you really go to this school? Are you really a government minister? That's not what she's doing. She's not calling the qualifications, what qualifications this person has regarding gender issues. Do you have a qualification in order to talk about gender issues? No, she's not doing that. The author of passage 2 refers to a statement made in passage 1 in order to B, dispute the assertion made about women in the first sentence of passage 1. So she refers to that statement in order to dispute the assertion made about women. Maybe, I don't know, dispute the assertion made about women in the first sentence, because the first sentence of passage 1 says that half the human race excluded, that they are blah, 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 are all political phenomenon apparently impossible to explain in the abstract. No, she's actually not disputing the assertion. She's not saying that these things are not true or that they are impossible to explain. Maybe she's saying they are impossible to explain, or like that it's not right to say they're impossible to explain, so she's disputing this assertion. Let's leave B. Let's take a look at C. In line 61 to 65, the author of passage 2 refers to a statement made in passage 1 in order to C, develop her argument, Wollstonecraft's argument, by highlighting what she sees as a flawed reasoning. I like that. That's exactly what she's saying. She's bringing up this quote from this guy by saying, if this is true, if what you say is true, on what does your constitution rest on? What does your argument rest on? What's the foundation then? If the abstract rights of man will be discussed and explained, then those of women by a parity will not shrink. So she's saying, you say that you can't argue about these points, but if you can argue about these points for men, you also can for women. So in other words, like, you didn't understand what was going on. Like, you made a mistake here. This makes you look bad. This is a logical fault. I like C a lot. What about D? The author of passage 2 refers to a statement made in passage 1 in order to validate the concluding declarations made by the author of passage 1 about gender roles. No, she doesn't want to validate it. She doesn't want to say that what Talleyrand is saying is correct. He's saying that women just need to follow blindly and don't ask questions. Is Wollstonecraft going to validate those conclusions? No. She didn't bring this up in order to say, like, yes, that's true. No. So now we're down between B and C. In the author of passage refers to a statement in passage 1 in order to dispute the assertion made about women in the first sentence. Is she disputing the fact that half the human race is excluded from the other half by participation in government, that half are native by birth but foreign by law, that half are property owners yet have no direct influence or representation? Is she going against this? Is she trying to dispute that? Like, no, that's actually not true. Men and women are equal. That's the take that I get now, another read of it, when I'm thinking about this problem. Because at first I thought, well, B is talking about, we're disputing the assertion made about women in the first sentence that it's impossible to explain, that they are all political phenomena apparently impossible to explain, lines 6 and 7. So maybe Wollstonecraft is saying, like, yeah, that's not correct. But let's think about this two ways. That's one read of it. But the other read of it could have been what I was talking about before. Does Mary Wollstonecraft dispute the assertions that women are unequal? I'm already getting into gray area. Furthermore, is that why the author passage 2 refers to this statement in order to show on how that's not true? Or is she bringing it up? Is she bringing up his little, thought here that it's impossible to debate on abstract principles? She then says, if so, on what does your Constitution rest? What are you talking about if you go on to talk about the abstract ideas of why men and women deserve to have different gender roles? She then says, I think that's ridiculous. Like, if you believe this, then what is your argument based on if you think that it's impossible to explain why women are in this subordinate position? I think a much stronger answer for 38 is going to be C, because after that quote, why does she do it? Read always for context. Read a little bit after or a little bit before to understand why is she bringing up this point. And she says, if you believe this, then everything you believe is kind of ridiculous, because then it makes no sense. I think that there's a flawed reasoning that she's pointing out. She's pointing out a fault in his argument rather than trying to dispute an assertion. She's not using that in order to say, and therefore I believe that first sentence that you said in passage 1 was wrong. What part of it? Is it the part that's impossible to explain, or the part that women are unequal? And even then, the part about women, it being impossible to explain, that's the reason in order to just dispute it. I'm going to bring up something you said in order to dispute the fact that it's impossible to explain because you explained it. Maybe it's a little bit circular. C is, I think, a much stronger answer because it highlights and calls out exactly why passage 1 makes no sense. The answer number 38 is going to be C.